Okay, ready for this. What if your heart could hold memories? Or, like, babies are already learning language in the womb.
It's pretty wild stuff.
Yeah, today we're doing a deep dive into research that's going to make you rethink, like, everything you thought you knew about memory and learning. We've got 3 articles for you today. Beyond the Pump, which is a study about heart memory.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and an Aeon essay called How Fetuses Learn to Talk While They're Still in the Womb.
Wow.
And then a Nature Communications article, and this one is really something. The masked-spaced learning effect in non-neural human cells.
You're kidding, memory in
Yeah,
cells.
you heard that right, cells.
It's incredible how these articles all look at memory from such different angles.
Right.
We're going to start with the heart, then head to the womb, and then, zoom all the way down to individual cells.
It's going to be a wild ride for sure.
It really is, and it might just turn everything we thought we knew about memory upside down.
Okay, so let's start with the heart. That Beyond the Pump article, I gotta say, it really caught my attention. It talks about, like, heart transplant recipients who say they start experiencing personality changes, or even, get this, inheriting memories from their donors.
Really makes you think, doesn't it?
It's just, wow.
That article dives into some really strange things doctors have seen with heart transplants. Like, some people who get a new heart, they describe feeling super connected to the donor, even picking up their tastes or habits.
No way.
Yeah, and there are even stories of people having, really vivid dreams or memories that seem to belong to the person whose heart they got.
So are we saying hearts actually store memories?
Mm-hmm.
That's, like, completely different from what we've always thought about the brain, right? Like, isn't the brain the one in charge of memory?
Yeah, it really challenges that traditional view for sure. I mean, the brain is definitely the main place where memories are processed and stored, but this research makes you wonder, could other organs, like the heart, be playing a bigger role than we ever imagined?
So then how is that even possible? How could these experiences even happen?
Well, researchers have come up with some pretty interesting theories. One is this idea of what they call cellular memory, where individual cells might be able to hold on to some kind of memory. And then there's epigenetics, which looks at how things in our environment can actually affect how our genes work. It's basically saying that experiences, even traumatic ones, could get passed down through generations, not just through DNA, but through these changes in how genes are expressed.
So it's not just our genes themselves, but, like, how they're turned on or off that could be carrying these memories.
Exactly.
Wow, that's amazing.
And there's another really interesting theory. It turns out that the heart actually has its own little network of neurons, which some people call the heart brain.
Hold on, wait a minute. The heart has a brain.
I know, right?
I always thought of it as, like, just a pump.
Yeah, it's not a brain in the way we usually think of it, but this network of neurons lets the heart kind of do its own thing to some degree. It can learn, remember, and even make decisions without getting direct instructions from the brain.
So is my heart, like, thinking on its own? It's a crazy thought.
It might not be thinking in the way we understand it, but this research suggests that the heart is way more than just a pump. It seems to be really important for our emotions, our memories, and maybe even our sense of self.
Okay, so we've got these really mind-blowing possibilities about heart memory. But now let's switch gears and talk about babies in the womb. This Eon essay, it starts with this crazy story about vegetus uterinus, which is basically babies crying in the womb.
No way, really?
Yeah, apparently people have been documenting this for centuries, like all over the world.
I had no idea.
Who knew babies could cry before they're even born?
It really is incredible, right? Like, vegetus uterinus is a perfect example of how much is going on developmentally. I mean, before a baby's even born. Shows us that vocalization starts way earlier than we might think.
Right. And the article talks about how fetuses develop those communication abilities. Like, there's this early research by Davenport Hooker back in the 1930s where he actually filmed fetal movements.
Mm.
Kind of ethically questionable now, but still.
Yeah, his methods wouldn't fly today, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
his work was really groundbreaking at the time.
Oh, absolutely. He documented, like, all the details of how fetal movements and sensation develop. And one of the things he found was that the trigeminal nerve, which controls facial sensation and jaw movement, is, like, the first sensory system to come online.
Oh, wow.
And that's super important for being able to make sounds, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's like the trigeminal nerve sets the stage for all those complex movements needed to produce sounds.
I love how the article uses this analogy, comparing the developing brain to, like, a switchboard operator testing circuits through those little twitches babies do in their sleep in the womb.
Yeah, that's a great way to picture it.
It really paints this picture of the brain constantly working, even before birth, to refine and prep those communication pathways.
Yeah, so through all that constant back and forth between sensory input and movement, the fetus goes from just simple cries to these things called protophones.
Protophones, huh?
Yeah, they're like the building blocks of speech, the precursors to all those complex sounds we use in language.
So babies are basically practicing their speech skills in the womb.
It seems that way. Pretty amazing.
It really is. And
Yeah.
get this, the article says that newborns actually cry in the accent of their mother tongue.
Wait, what? So they have accents before they're even born. How is that even possible?
Right.
Well, it has to do with the unique acoustics of the womb. You see, the uterine environment acts like this low-pass filter. It absorbs higher frequency sounds. So while the fetus might not hear every little detail of their mother's speech, they are picking up on the rhythm and intonation, what we call prosody.
So even though they're not hearing everything perfectly, they're still absorbing the essence of the language.
Exactly. It really shows just how sensitive and adaptable the developing brain is. Babies are constantly taking in information and making sense of the world even before they're actually in it.
That's amazing. Okay, so we've got hearts maybe holding on to memories, babies learning language in the womb, and now, get ready for this. We're going even deeper, down to the level of individual cells. And this article from Nature Communications, the mass-spaced learning effect in non-neural human cells. It's going to seriously challenge what you thought you knew about learning and memory.
This is some cutting-edge stuff.
It really is. It suggests that even cells, like the basic building blocks of our bodies, might be able to learn.
Wow.
And what's even cooler, they seem to learn best using the same techniques that work for us, like the mass-spaced effect.
Interesting.
Okay, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, can you explain what the mass-spaced effect is?
Sure. So imagine you're trying to learn something new, like let's say playing the guitar. If you try to cram all your practice into one long session, you might feel like you're making progress, but chances are you'll forget most of it pretty quickly.
Oh, tell me about it. Cramming for exams never really worked for me.
Exactly. But if to spread out your practice over time, you're going to remember it much better. That's the mass-spaced effect in action. Spacing out learning over time leads to stronger memories.
So spaced learning is better, even for ourselves.
That's what this research is suggesting, and they were able to actually show this principle in non-neural cells. Specifically, they used neuroblastoma and HEK293 cell lines.
And how do you even train a cell? What does that even look like?
Well, they use these two chemicals, forskolin and TPA, which activate certain pathways involved in memory formation.
Okay.
And by repeatedly stimulating the cells with these chemicals, they basically mimicked a learning experience. It's like giving the cells a workout for their memory.
I see. So they dosed the cells and then looked for changes that would indicate learning.
Right. They measured the expression of a gene called luciferase, which produces a protein that emits light.
So the cells literally lit up if they learned.
Pretty much. And the results were fascinating. When they delivered these chemical pulses in a spaced pattern, the cells showed way stronger and longer-lasting luciferase expression compared to a single massive pulse. It was as if the cells that got spaced training had a stronger memory of the experience.
So even at the level of a single cell, we see this fundamental principle of space learning being super important for memory. It's almost like this principle is built into life itself.
It really highlights how essential these principles of learning and memory are, and not just for our brains, but for all sorts of biological systems.
This is incredible. We've gone from hearts potentially holding memories to babies picking up language in the womb, and now to the idea that even individual cells can learn. My mind is officially blown.
I know. It's amazing, right? And we're just getting started. Stay tuned, because next time we're going to explore what all these amazing discoveries mean for our whole understanding of what it means to be human. It's really mind-blowing to think about even our cells having some basic kind of memory. It challenges how we think about learning,
Right.
where it all happens.
Right. I mean, we were just talking about how babies in the womb are picking up language already.
Right.
But to think that learning might be happening even deeper, like at the cellular level, inside our very cells, that's just crazy.
It is, and the research even shows that these non-neural cells actually learn best using the same techniques that work for us humans. Remember the masked spaced effect we were talking about before?
Yeah, like the idea that spacing out your study sessions helps you remember things way better than just cramming everything all at once.
Exactly.
Like when I tried to learn Italian, oh man, before that trip to Rome, I definitely should have spaced out those lessons instead of staying up all night.
Yeah, we've all been there.
For sure. But it's wild to think that same principle applies even at the cellular level.
It is pretty wild. The researchers were able to show that mast-spaced effect in those neuroblastoma and HEK293 cells we were discussing.
So, like, are you saying my cells are smarter than I thought? I always knew they were busy keeping me alive, but I never thought of them as little learners.
Well, think of it this way. They're responding to stimuli and changing how they behave based on what happened before. Maybe not as complicated as the brain, but still,
Okay.
it's a simple kind of learning, but it shows just how basic these processes are to life itself.
This is making me completely rethink everything I thought about memory. It's not just about neurons firing in the brain.
Everywhere.
It's everywhere, it seems like, this more widespread thing happening all over the body.
That's exactly what makes this whole thing so fascinating. We always thought memory was in one specific place, but now we're seeing that maybe it's a property of, like, biological systems as a whole,
Yeah.
like a whole web of memory from our organs down to our cells.
Okay, so we've got hearts that might hold memories, babies learning language even before they're born, and then even single cells showing some kind of learning. How do we even begin to connect all of this?
Well, if you take a step back, all three of these articles have a common thread. They show that no matter how complex the system, from organs to developing fetuses to single cells, you see these core principles of learning and memory popping up.
It's like this universal language of learning,
Yeah.
like how you could play the same melody on different instruments,
Mhm.
piano, guitar, or even just singing it.
That's a great way to put it.
It's still the same melody, but expressed differently.
Yeah, and this idea challenges the way we thought about memory, where it lives. It makes you wonder if maybe different parts of the body all work together to create memories.
So our understanding of memory is expanding beyond just the brain and into the rest of the body.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Think back to the article about how babies develop in the womb. They talked about how prosody, the rhythm and intonation of speech, is really important for babies to learn language. Well, that means there's this connection between the mother's memory, the developing brain of the baby, and this shared experience of language.
That's a cool way to think about it. It's like memory is this shared thing passed down from one generation to the next.
And the research on cellular memory takes this even further. If even our cells can learn, what does that tell us about consciousness? What's the difference between a simple biological response and, like, a more complex awareness?
Whoa, now those are some deep questions.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's like you're making me rethink the very definition of life and consciousness.
That's what's so amazing about this research. It forces us to question our assumptions, to think about ourselves and the world in new ways. Think about the heart, right?
Yeah.
We used to think of it as just the simple pump, but like the Beyond the Pump article was saying, maybe it's so much more than that.
Right.
Maybe it plays a big role in how we experience emotions, our memories, and even our sense of self.
It's like our hearts have their own wisdom. It's not just pumping blood. It's feeling, remembering, experiencing the world.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful idea. And the research about fetal development, that shows us just how early all of this starts. Babies are engaging with the world and forming memories long before they're even born.
It's amazing to think about all the things we're learning and experiencing without even realizing it.
It really is. It shows you the incredible complexity and potential that we all have inside us.
Okay, so we've talked about all these crazy ideas.
Yeah.
Heart memory, babies learning before they're born, and even our cells being able to learn. But why should we care about any of this? How does it affect us in our daily lives?
These discoveries are huge, and they have implications way beyond just the lab. Think about things like healthcare, education, and even our understanding of consciousness.
Okay, I'm listening.
For example, if we think about organ transplantation, understanding how memory might transfer could lead to better care for patients.
How so?
Well, imagine if we recognized that organs could carry some part of the donor with them. That would change how we do transplants, making it a more compassionate and understanding process for everyone involved.
That's an important point. It adds a whole new layer of, ethical considerations to organ donation.
Yeah, for sure. And when it comes to education, think about the impact of space learning. If we really understood how powerful that is, it could change how we teach and learn.
So are you saying that cramming for tests is a bad idea?
Probably, yeah. Embracing these space learning techniques could help us learn more effectively and make it more fun, too.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about, human consciousness? How does all this change our understanding of what it means to be aware?
That's a huge question that people have been trying to answer for centuries. If even our cells can learn, does that mean consciousness isn't just about having a complex brain? Could there be another, more basic kind of awareness happening even at the cellular level?
That's wild. It makes you think that consciousness could be much more common and widespread than we ever imagined.
That's the beauty of science, right? It pushes us to explore the unknown, to challenge what we thought we knew, and consider things that might seem strange at first.
It feels like we're always on the edge of discovering something that could completely change how we understand the universe and our place in it.
It's an exciting time to be alive, for sure, and that's what makes this deep dive so interesting. We've gone from the heart to the womb to the microscopic world of cells. We've seen how all these seemingly separate pieces are connected by these basic principles of learning and memory, and how these discoveries affect things like healthcare, education, and even the nature of consciousness itself.
Yeah, this has been a wild ride so far for sure.
Right. It really makes you appreciate how complex and amazing life is.
It does. I feel like I'm seeing the world with new eyes now.
And that's what makes scientific exploration so important. It's not just about finding answers, it's about sparking curiosity, using our imagination, and always asking questions about the world and the mysteries we all hold inside. We've covered a lot of ground today, but we're not done yet. Stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive, where we're going to explore even more about these incredible discoveries.
You know, after going through all this research, I can't help but wonder if we've been thinking about memory in like too limited of a way.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's easy to fall into the trap of seeing memory as just, information stored in the brain, like files on a computer.
Right.
But what we've learned today suggests that it might be so much more dynamic and widespread.
It's like we're starting to see a different kind of memory, one that's less about hard facts and more about like experiences, feelings, and maybe even a sense of connection to something bigger than ourselves.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it. And it brings to mind the Beyond the Pump article and those stories of heart transplant recipients feeling connected to their donors or even experiencing memories that seem to come from someone else.
Yeah, like that story of Claire Sylvia,
Oh, yeah, Claire Sylvia.
the woman who wrote A Change of Heart after she got a heart-lung transplant.
Right.
She talked about how she suddenly craved beer and green peppers, things she never liked before, and then later found out that her donor loved those things.
It's hard to believe.
I know, it's just unbelievable.
It is remarkable. And while we can't definitively say that those experiences are because of memory transfer, it definitely raises some super interesting questions about memory and how our bodies and minds are all connected.
Absolutely. And then there's the idea that even our individual cells might hold some kind of memory. It's mind-blowing when you think about it.
Yeah.
Every single cell in our body carries our DNA,
It's true.
the blueprint of who we are.
Right.
But what if those cells are also holding on to experiences, like adapting and learning in ways we don't even fully understand yet?
Yeah. It's a really wild thought, isn't it? It suggests that memory could be woven into, like, the core of our existence at every level.
It's like we're made up of these tiny little memory banks,
Yeah.
each one with its own story, and together they create this bigger story of who we are.
And that story, as we've seen, it starts even before we're born. The research on fetal learning shows just how incredible babies are, even in the womb.
Yeah.
They can learn and adapt to their surroundings. They're picking up language, developing their senses, forming memories, all while they're still inside their mothers.
It makes you realize how crucial those early experiences are
Mm-hmm.
and how much they shape us.
Absolutely. And it also highlights how interconnected memory is across generations. The mother's voice, her emotions, her experiences, they all become part of the baby's world,
Yeah?
shaping those first memories and laying the foundation for their future development.
It's like this beautiful passing down of experiences from one generation to the next.
A shared legacy.
Exactly. And that legacy might even go deeper, down to the level of our cells. If our cells can learn and adapt, then maybe our experiences, both good and bad, leave a mark on them.
You're right. It could be that our memories aren't just stories we tell ourselves. They're actually shaping us at the most basic level.
That's a really powerful thought. It means we have the potential to heal and grow, not just through our minds, but like through our very cells.
It's exciting to think about.
You know, one thing that's really stayed with me from all of this is that maybe memory isn't as set in stone as we often think.
That's interesting.
If our cells are constantly learning and changing, maybe our memories are too.
Yeah. That really challenges the idea that memory is like a fixed recording of the past. What if it's more fluid, always changing based on our experiences?
Yeah. Makes you wonder about time itself.
Mm.
If our memories aren't just fixed points in the past, but like living things that evolve with us, then maybe the past isn't as far away as we think.
It's a beautiful idea, and it really speaks to the power of memory to shape both our present and our future.
Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the fascinating world of cellular memory. We've explored so much, from the heart to the womb to those tiny little cells, and along the way, we've really challenged some of our basic assumptions about memory. Where does it live? How does it work? And what does it all mean for us?
We've uncovered some amazing research, but it feels like we've just scratched the surface. There's
Yeah.
so much more to discover, so many questions left unanswered.
But one thing's for sure, memory is this incredible journey, and exploring it can change how we understand ourselves, our world, and maybe even life itself. So keep asking those questions, keep exploring, and always be open to new possibilities.
I couldn't agree more.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible adventure. Until next time, keep diving deep.